Another Tuesday evening. Chloe and Ben were over again. "Oh, Liv, you're always so generous," Chloe sighed, reaching for the last spring roll. "Generous, that's what they called it. I'm Olivia, 27, junior marketing manager. Chicago, single. Publicly, I'm a slightly above average wage slave, battling student loans and the daily grind. They see me as just that, but they have no idea." "Mom needs a new fridge," Ben added, his eyes flicking around my apartment. "It's a nice place, a two-bed with a view. Rent-controlled, of course. They don't know I own the building, or the 3 other properties scattered around the city, or that I'm sitting on a cool 7-figure net worth." "I'll look into it," I said, forcing a smile. "They think they know me. They see the surface. They have no idea what's brewing beneath." My side hustle is a thriving e-commerce empire, generating more revenue in a month than my annual salary. It started with one small online store, then another, then another. Now I'm diversified. I'm on the advisory board for a local charity Chloe claims to support. The irony? Delicious. The day my father died, it all shifted. His passing was sudden, unexpected. A heart attack. He hadn't been ill, not visibly. But the truth was, he'd left behind a mountain of debt and a small, almost worthless life insurance policy. The responsibility, the absolute weight of it, landed squarely on my shoulders. Chloe, 9 years older, barely blinked. She had a husband, a house, a life she wasn't willing to jeopardize. Mom, frail and reliant, was abandoned with a dilapidated house and dwindling savings. That's when the decision solidified. The first crack appeared when Chloe, after selling off Dad's tools, tried to get a cut of my inheritance from my father. I had none. It was all debt. It was my mother's. But I knew I had to protect her and myself. I started putting money aside, then invested in a small, pre-owned e-commerce store. I learned the ins and outs of Shopify, mastered Facebook ads, and within 3 months, I was making more than I was at my soul-crushing job. I knew then, secrecy was power. At first, the struggle was real. Late nights packing orders, dealing with customer service headaches, juggling work and my new ventures. My friends, my family, they saw the exhaustion, the stress. They attributed it to the demanding job and the burden of caring for Mom. No one knew I was building something substantial, something that would one day free me. They saw me scrimp and save, a sacrifice for Mom. What they didn't see was the steady growth of my portfolio, the compounding interest, the acquisition of properties. My first major win? A vintage clothing store that took off on Etsy. Within 6 months, it was generating $10,000 a month. It was enough to cover all of Mom's expenses and more. I reinvested every penny, diversifying into different niches, always scaling, always learning. I used my official salary to pay off student loans and to keep the facade of normalcy in place. The feeling of quiet satisfaction, of knowing I was building something while everyone else saw me as a victim, was addictive. It was a game of hide and seek, and I was winning. Now the game is changing. Chloe and Ben's visits have increased. The questions about Mom's finances, persistent. They are sniffing around, searching for the hidden treasure. I can smell their desperation. The scent of desperation hung thick in the air as the tension mounted. "So, Liv, have you heard anything about Dad's things?" Chloe asked, delicately dabbing her mouth with a napkin. "He had some investments, right?" "Investments?" I echoed, feigning ignorance, while inwardly calculating the exact square footage of the penthouse I'd just closed on. The irony was a sharp jab. Chloe, with her designer handbag and Ben's 6-figure salary, had no idea that I'd just finalized the purchase of a building on Lake Shore Drive, a property I'd been eyeing for months. She was worried about her inheritance. I was building an empire. "Well, the insurance policy was modest," Ben chimed in, casting a pointed glance at Mom, who sat silently, picking at her dinner. He must have left something else. What they didn't know was that something else was a financial engine I'd meticulously crafted. My e-commerce ventures were generating over $400,000 in annual revenue, with a 30% profit margin. I owned 5 profitable online stores, including a pet supply company, a home goods business, and a niche beauty brand. My real estate portfolio was yielding a 6% cap rate, generating passive income that dwarfed my marketing salary of $75,000. My net worth had already surpassed $1.5 million, with projections to reach $3 million in the next 3 years. I'd also quietly invested $50,000 into a local tech startup, which had already doubled its valuation. I've been so busy with work, I said, managing a weary smile. Haven't had time to think about it. The truth was, my work was a carefully orchestrated symphony of business deals, strategic acquisitions, and calculated risks. My days were spent optimizing ad campaigns, analyzing market trends, and negotiating leases. My nights were filled with building my financial fortress. The facade was becoming harder to maintain, however. Chloe and Ben's veiled inquiries were relentless. Their concern for Mom was transparently a smokescreen for their own greed. I could feel the pressure building, the anticipation of the inevitable confrontation. I just had to wait for the right moment. That moment arrived when I announced I was moving out. The small rental I was in, a mere $2,800 a month, was a temporary measure. I had been looking for months, a suitable place to start fresh. The timing was perfect. The next day, movers arrived. Chloe and Ben were there, helping. The apartment slowly emptied of its contents. They watched, confused, as the movers took away everything, including the cleaning robot. "Where are you going?" Chloe asked, her voice laced with a sudden tremor of concern. "What are you doing with all of this?" "I'm moving," I replied, my voice calm, the satisfaction bubbling up from within. "But this furniture, the appliances, they're all yours?" Ben stammered, his face paling. "Yes," I said, watching the color drain from their faces. "I own the building." The silence was deafening. The game was over. They stood frozen, mouths agape. The last box was loaded. The movers offered a final, expectant glance, and I gave the signal. The door clicked shut. "Liv," Chloe began, her voice now a desperate whisper, "this isn't funny. What's going on?" I turned, a small, tight smile playing on my lips. "Why don't you ask Mom?" Carol, who had been silent, finally spoke, her voice trembling. "Olivia, dear, what's happening? Where are we going to live?" The trap was sprung. Now the truth would be revealed. I held the keys to my apartment, which I was leaving, and the keys to my new life. I opened my purse and pulled out a stack of documents. Among them were the deeds to several properties. I tossed them onto the coffee table. "This is just a fraction," I said, gesturing around the empty apartment. "These are the properties I own, including this building, and everything that was in it." Chloe and Ben stared at the documents, then at each other, their faces contorted with disbelief. Carol sat heavily on the empty couch. You did all this?" Chloe finally managed, her voice barely audible. "I did," I replied, the words a quiet declaration. "But the inheritance." Ben sputtered, his eyes darting around the room, searching for something, anything, that could disprove what was happening. "There was no inheritance," I said, my voice clear. "I took care of everything, including Mom." I watched the pieces of their carefully constructed reality shatter before my eyes. Their masks had fallen, exposing their true motives. Now it was time for the grand finale. I paused, savoring the moment, the years of resentment finally finding its voice. "I'm moving to my new penthouse, and you, Mom, will have to find a new place to live. This apartment will be rented out, and you are welcome to come with me to see it." The truth, like a tidal wave, was about to crash over them. The countdown had ended. The revelation was about to begin. The impact was immediate. Chloe's carefully maintained composure cracked. Her face, usually smooth and well-tended, crumpled. "Olivia, please, we can talk about this. We can work something out." The desperation in her voice was a stark contrast to the condescending tone she usually employed. Ben, ever the pragmatist, attempted a different tack. "Olivia, this is impulsive. Let's be reasonable. Maybe you were hasty. We can still be a family." He reached out a hand, a gesture of reconciliation that felt pathetically transparent. Carol, however, was the most devastating. Her face, etched with the lines of years of unspoken expectations, crumpled. "Olivia," she began, her voice barely a whisper, I don't understand. After everything?" Tears welled in her eyes, tracing paths down her wrinkled cheeks. I watched them, a strange mix of vindication and detachment washing over me. Years of being overlooked, underestimated, and used had finally culminated in this moment of utter revelation. I took a deep breath, the scent of stale air and lingering resentment filling my lungs. "Hasty?" I repeated, turning toward Chloe, my voice laced with a detached amusement. "No, Chloe, this has been years in the making." I turned to Ben. "Family? I haven't had a family in a long time." Then I addressed Mom. Everything. Mom, I have been supporting you financially for years. Everything that you have, everything that you depend on has come from my efforts. The silence that followed was thicker than before. They all stared at me, their eyes wide with a mixture of shock, shame, and a nascent fear. Now I'm done, I said, my voice firm. I'm moving on to live my life, on my own terms. Chloe, in a last-ditch effort, lunged forward. Liv, we can help you. We can be there for you now. I sidestepped her, a flicker of annoyance crossing my face. Help me? By what, draining my bank accounts? No, the show is over. I grabbed my purse and turned to leave. I paused at the door, turning back to face them. Mom, I'll arrange for you to have a place to stay. I'll make sure you're taken care of, but you will live by your own means. I'm done. The door slammed shut behind me, leaving them in the echoing silence of their shattered assumptions. The apartment, once a symbol of my servitude, now stood as a monument to their misjudgment. I took the elevator down, the weight of their reactions settling on my shoulders. Outside, the city buzzed with life, oblivious to the seismic shift that had just occurred. The next few days were a whirlwind of legal paperwork, property transfers, and the final, irreversible severing of ties. Chloe and Ben, initially desperate, then turned cold, their attempts at contact rebuffed. Carol, after the initial shock, retreated into herself, her silence a new form of punishment. The phone calls from distant relatives, however, were a different story. They came like vultures, circling the newly exposed carcass of my wealth. Each call was a thinly veiled plea for financial assistance, a reminder of the transactional nature of familial bonds. But amidst the chaos, a new reality began to take shape. My penthouse, a glass-walled sanctuary overlooking the city, was finally furnished. The view was stunning, the space a testament to my hard work. I had created the life I wanted. The silence in the apartment was both a relief and a heavy burden. I walked from room to room, surveying my domain. The ghost of my family's expectations seemed to linger in the air, a constant reminder of the price of freedom. One evening, I stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows, a glass of wine in my hand, watching the city lights twinkle below. The freedom was exhilarating, but the loneliness was palpable. I'd won the game, but the victory felt hollow. I had the penthouse, the success, but the emptiness of their absence was a constant reminder of the cost. I saw, with a detached amusement, how quickly perceptions shifted. The people who had dismissed me now treated me with a newfound respect, even a hint of envy. Yet, in the end, the only people I could truly trust were those I had chosen to build this life with. I took a sip of wine, the smooth liquid a small comfort. I had escaped their clutches, but the scars of the past remained, a permanent reminder of the choices I had made and the secrets I had kept. I was finally in control, but a part of me would always yearn for a connection, a bond that had been sacrificed at the altar of my ambition. The phone rang, a persistent intrusion. It was Chloe. I let it go to voicemail. Another plea, no doubt, a desperate attempt to claw their way back into my good graces. I deleted it unread. The city, a glittering tapestry of lights, stretched before me. The penthouse, my haven, was a testament to my resilience, my ambition. I had built this life, brick by painstaking brick, in the shadows. Now, bathed in the glow of my success, I felt a profound sense of isolation. Sarah, a friend from college, called. We had drifted apart, the demands of my hidden life consuming my time and energy. Liv, wow, you're doing amazing things. I'm so proud of you. Her voice was filled with genuine admiration, a welcome change from the veiled requests and backhanded compliments. We talked for hours, catching up, reconnecting on a level I hadn't experienced in years. Later that week, I ran into Ben at a charity gala. He tried to approach, but I saw him coming and I smoothly evaded him. His smile was strained, his eyes darting nervously. He had the audacity to be at a charity event. The irony was enough to make me laugh. I decided to use my position. I was now on the advisory board of the local charity. I used my influence, donating anonymously to a number of causes that I would once have simply bragged about supporting. The irony was not lost on me. Mom, after a few months of sullen silence, finally reached out. It wasn't an apology, not exactly. It was a request, a plea for help. Liv, darling, I need some things. My heart tightened. I had expected this. I had prepared for it. I sent her a monthly allowance enough to cover her basic needs, but nothing more. I didn't want to become their ATM again. Years passed. The shock of the revelation began to fade. The whispers died down. Some people moved on. Others, like Chloe and Ben, remained distant, their faces forever etched with the sting of their misjudgment. Mom, with her monthly checks, was safe but never truly grateful. One sunny afternoon, I was at a cafe, watching the people go by. I spotted my sister, Chloe. She caught my eye and looked away as if she had seen a ghost. I smiled. Now it was her turn to feel the sting of being ignored. I never forgot the choices I made. The secrets I kept had built a life for me. That life was mine. I had built it. But the scars of the past would always remain. I looked out over the city. Alone, but free. The penthouse was mine, and that was enough. The initial surge of freedom was intoxicating. I reveled in the anonymity, the absence of judgment. My days were now filled with the satisfying hum of productivity, not the crushing weight of expectation. I poured myself into my businesses, expanding my portfolio, diversifying my investments. I hired a small team, finally delegating the tasks that had once consumed my nights and weekends. The e-commerce ventures continued to thrive, fueled by my strategic thinking and relentless work ethic. I even started a foundation, using the wealth I'd accumulated to support causes I believed in, causes I had once only pretended to care about. My apartment became a sanctuary, a space where I could be authentically myself. I filled it with art, books, and furniture I loved, creating a haven that reflected my tastes and sensibilities. I hosted small gatherings with my newfound friends, sharing stories and laughter without the shadow of my family's expectations looming over us. The practical changes were stark. My phone, once overflowing with demands and criticisms, was now silent. My calendar, once dictated by family obligations, was now my own. I could travel, pursue hobbies, and invest my time in whatever brought me joy. This was the life I had always craved, a life built on my own terms, but the price was high. The absence of my family was a constant ache, a dull throb beneath the surface of my newfound freedom. The shift in how others approached me was subtle but undeniable. Acquaintances, former colleagues, and even casual acquaintances suddenly became eager to connect. Invitations to social events increased. People sought my advice, my opinion, my connections. The respect was palpable, but it was also conditional, rooted in my wealth and influence. This newfound attention felt hollow, a stark contrast to the genuine affection I had always craved. Some relationships evolved in unexpected ways. Sarah, the friend from college, remained a constant source of support. Our bond, strengthened by a shared history and a genuine understanding of my struggles, grew even closer. We traveled together, shared experiences, and built a friendship that was now unburdened by the secrecy and the pressure to conform. Others, however, could not navigate the shift. Chloe and Ben, consumed by resentment and a wounded pride, remained distant, their anger a palpable presence in the rare, stilted conversations we shared. They had lost their meal ticket, and they were not interested in a relationship built on anything else. Carol, after the initial shock, continued to rely on my financial support, but the warmth and affection that had once existed between us were irrevocably lost. Her requests were now curt, her gratitude perfunctory. I found myself navigating a world where I was both admired and isolated. I felt a deep sense of satisfaction in my achievements, but I also mourned the loss of the family I had known, however dysfunctional it may have been. The freedom was intoxicating, but the loneliness was a constant companion. One evening, I sat on the balcony of my penthouse, overlooking the city. The lights twinkled below, a glittering testament to my success. The air was crisp, the silence profound. I realized that I had built my empire on a foundation of secrecy, a wall of protection that had shielded me from judgment and expectation. Now, I was living openly, but the scars of the past were still visible. The choices I had made, the secrets I had kept, had led me to this place. I had gained my independence, my financial freedom, but at the cost of my family. I had traded the comfort of familiarity for the exhilaration of autonomy, and I had to live with the consequences. I looked down at the city, its endless possibilities. The future was unwritten, a blank canvas. I knew that the road ahead would be both challenging and rewarding. I would continue to build, to grow, to explore. But I also knew that I would carry the weight of my choices, the echoes of the past, with me always. The phone rang. It was an invitation, a gala. I was now a desirable guest. I took a deep breath. I closed my eyes. I knew that no matter how successful I was, some part of me would always be searching for something more. I could see the path ahead. I knew how to handle it. But the emptiness remained. I opened my eyes. The city lights glittered, offering no comfort, just the infinite possibilities. I knew what to do. I needed to fill that emptiness. I would. The city shimmered below, a million tiny lights reflecting in the vast expanse of my penthouse windows. Above it all, I stood, a lone figure silhouetted against the twilight, the air alive with the ghosts of choices made and paths not taken. Success, I learned, wasn't a solution but a magnifying glass. It didn't erase the past, it illuminated it, etching the contours of my life in sharp relief. I had built a fortress of wealth, brick by hidden brick, but the walls, however strong, couldn't contain the echoes of what was lost. Family, the illusion of belonging, shattered like glass, leaving behind only the cold, hard truth of my self-reliance. I had gained control, yes, but the price was a world forever viewed through a lens of suspicion, a landscape haunted by the absence of genuine connection. I'm here, the architect of my own gilded cage, forever marked by the choice to become the unseen. I am Olivia. And you, have you ever been underestimated? Misunderstood? Then tell me, do you see your own reflection in the shimmering city lights?